Hello aspirants, welcome to Ishna IAS Academy. Hope you are all doing well and your preparation is also going on the good pace. Isn't that so? So today in this, actually we have promised to give you a series on current affairs, and that too the most important current affair topics which will be useful for your upcoming UPSC preliminaries. Isn't that so? So in that series of the title Yuddha Abhyas, this is the third one which we are going to discuss today. Okay, so for more this kind of videos, please do subscribe to Vishnu IAS Academy channel and also click the bell icon to get the notifications for you people without any delay. Okay, and also we would like to hear from you your valuable suggestions, comments, okay, and what all you need, okay, your demands, etc. kind of things, and please do comment in the comment section below. Okay, so now without wasting much of time, let's get into the topic directly. So the topic which we are going to discuss today is India's demographic profile, okay, opportunities and challenges. First of all, we are going to look at what India's demographic profile is and also what are the opportunities and also the challenges that are involved with this demographic profile. Okay, first let's see why is this in the news. Why? Because the recent discussion about urging families to have at least 3 children has reignited a critical debate on India's population policies. Recently, a debate has been made on India's population policies because our government is worried about the declining India's population, and hence it is urging the families to enhance its number of children from 2 to 3. Okay, if you remember, recently the government of Andhra Pradesh has also announced that those individuals who want to participate or who want to contest in Panchayati Raj elections are supposed to have at least 3 children. Isn't that so? This is that kind of government policies which has come up with in order to encourage our population to beget more number of children in order to enhance our population, because government is worrying about the declining number of population. Okay, especially youth population. Okay, because if this trend continues, let's say after a span of 50 years, it is only the elder population that will be in large number. Isn't that so? Which is nothing but an economic burden to the government, and also the dependent population will be high in a country which is not so fruitful for the development of that nation. So that is why this kind of debate has taken place. Clear? And now, this discussion raises questions about, what are the questions this discussion raises about is that whether India is, this is the challenge, this is the topic of debate, and whereas this is the challenge. What is this challenge? Okay, government is encouraging all the families to enhance their population, to enhance their families, to enhance the size of their families. But is India in a condition to take care of its increasing population by providing all the facilities that are needed for the upbringing of its children? Let's see. This discussion raises questions about whether India is equipped to support a larger population. It should support a larger population with adequate education, healthcare and social services. But is the government capable enough to take care of its growing population educationally, okay, by healthcare wise, and also by enhancing the social services for that population? This is the challenge. Okay, we are going to look at the details of this kind of challenges and opportunities. Okay, come. Let's see. First of all, India's demographic profile. Okay, so what is the demographic composition? This is all we are going to look over here. India is the world's most populous country, which is a very known fact for all of us. Isn't that so? And its population is nearly 1.4 billion people. Okay, and in this, a significant proportion of this population is youth, which is a very happiest news for our nation. Okay, that means we are in the era of prosperous stage because of our large number of youth over here. Okay, and which will contribute to the economic growth through demographic dividend. Okay, this youth population is the future hope of our nation by contributing, because they will be contributing for the economic growth of India. And now, but here lies, however, this opportunity hinges on adequate investments in education, healthcare and skill development. Okay, but our government, is it in a position, okay, to spend or to invest adequately, okay, in these three sectors which are highly important for its population. Those are education, health and skill development of the population, or else there is no use in urging the families, okay, to enhance the number of children they are about to begot in the future. Isn't that so? If we are not in a position to give proper care to our children, it is worthless to plan to have more number of children. Isn't that so? Same is the case over here. Now, let's see. If we compare with other nations, these are the challenges. We are talking about the challenges over here, okay? Unlike countries such as Japan and Italy, which are facing population decline issues, India, as of now at least, currently, we are not in a situation facing that grave problem, okay? So, we are expecting this problem to be faced by our country in the near future, but not now itself, okay? Like Japan and Italy. So, we are not in the phase of demographic crisis just like Japan and Italy. So, hence, it is said that now itself encouraging or urging the families to increase their family size is of not much use, is what all the opinion we are going to conclude from this point, okay? And now, population growth trends. Let's see what this is. So, this is associated with fertility rates. Okay, so fertility rates in India have been steadily declining, okay, which is very much known fact for all of us, isn't that so? Fertility rate is declining in India, with the total fertility rate dropping to 2.0 in 2023. In 2023, the total fertility rate is 2.0, okay, which is below the replacement level of 2.1. Actually, if it is to 2. If the value of total fertility rate is 2.1, then we can replace it. But now the value has fallen far below of this replacement value, that is to 2.0. Okay, so now in this state, promoting population growth amid such trends, it could strain existing resources. So, in this condition, encouraging the people to have more children will be straining the existing resources. So, now what is total fertility rate? Total fertility rate is the number of children a woman can bear in her lifetime, in her fertile lifetime, that too. Okay, so that is said to be the total fertility rate. Clear? And now, let's see what is the current state of public investment in the most important crucial sectors for its population, that is education, healthcare and also skill development or the social economic upliftment for their population. Okay, so now let's see first one. First factor is education. Very important factor is education over here. So if we see the public expenditure in education sector, the government right now is spending 3%, only 3% of its GDP on the education of its vast population, which is far below of 4.7% of global average. That means very less percentage. So that means very less percentage of its budget is being allocated to the education sector currently by the government. Okay, in this situation what happens? So if this continues, there won't be any kind of quality education available to its population. Okay, so there won't be qualified teachers appointed for teaching the children. Okay, and also finally the classrooms and everything will be getting congested uselessly. Okay, without giving any quality education services that the government is supposed to provide to them. So what is the outcome of this? Obviously, it will be a waste of even this 3% of GDP. Okay, so right now, this has to be enhanced by the government of India as of now. Clear? And now, next, coming to the healthcare sector. Okay, and yeah, the share of education in the government budget has declined from 10.7% to 9.2%. From 10.7% to the share of the budget, government budget, okay, for education has declined from 10.7% to 9.7% over the past 7 years. Okay, raising concerns about the state's prioritization of education. Here we can see that whether the state is prioritizing education or it is deprioritizing the education given the numbers of this. You only decide over this. Okay. And now coming to the second sector, which is the healthcare. Very, very important sector. Isn't that so? This is also the deciding factor. So public health care spending has stagnated at less than 2% of GDP, far below the 6% that is recommended by the WHO. In our India, we are allocating only 2% of the GDP on health sector of its population, which is far below the 6% value that has been recommended by the World Health Organization. Okay, so here in this case also what happens, the expenditure burden, okay, on the poverty level people will be high, thereby their economic stability will be totally disturbed, such that they can't contribute much to the economy or the development of a country. Clear? So this is about the healthcare sector. And now overall impact on human development. So a poorly educated as well as any unhealthy population diminishes the productivity, as well as it will be undermining the economic growth, thereby increasing the burden on the government. Instead of our demography becoming an asset to the government, it will becoming a burden to the government. Okay, so hence government, first of all, it is advised to concentrate on enhancing the quality of the services that are to be provided for its population, instead of urging the families to increase their population. Clear? So now, what is the suggestion which is being given is quantity versus quality. We are supposed to give priority to the quality over quantity of the population. Okay? So, importance of quality. What is the importance of this quality is that, a large population does not inherently translate into economic growth. Isn't that true? So, large population means not large economic growth of a country. Okay? The quality of human capital, like, what is this quality of human capital? Education, be it skills and also the health, is far more important than the overall development of a nation. Okay? Because when only these three areas are taken care of the population, then only we can really observe the fruits or eat the fruits of that population. Isn't that clear? Isn't that so? Now, and one more example is that countries which are much more smaller than the so-called larger countries, and also countries with smaller population or the less number of people, okay, are having higher human development indices than the countries with larger populations, which means that the quality of the services that are arranged or provided for those people matter the most over the size of the population. Clear? And now coming to one more challenge, unemployment. Okay, so as we all know, India faces huge unemployment rate, with all the educated youth standing in the junction once their education is completed without able to move anywhere, because due to lack of employment. Isn't that so? So now it is better for the government, okay, to increase the employment rate, and also by creating jobs and also upgrading the skills of those youth who are just passed out. Okay? And now, next, coming to genetic heritage of the, next topic is genetic heritage of the Nicobaris. Okay? So what is this topic about? A recent genetic study, it has revealed that 25,000 strong Nicobaris population, okay, has significant ancestral connections with Austro-Asiatic populations of South and Southeast Asia. Okay, genetic studies have been conducted on 25,000 people dwelling in the Nicobaris or Nicobar Island. Okay, so the outcome of this study is that, it is said that the Nicobar population of our nation are having ancestors are having connections, okay, ancestral connections with Austro-Asiatic populations of South and Southeast Asia. Okay, the population dwelling in, people residing or dwelling in South as well as Southeast Asia are said to be the Austro-Asiatic population. Okay, so now after analyzing the DNA of our Nicobaris population, scientists have come to a conclusion that yes, our Nicobarese population are having connections, ancestral connections with Austroasiatic population who are living in South and Southeast Asia. Clear? Now, key findings. What are the key findings of this studies? Is that first one, as usual, Austroasiatic connections. Okay, the study revealed that the Nicobarese population share genetic affinity with Tin Mull population. There is a particular ethnic group of population known as Tin Mull, H-T-I-N. Tin Mull population, and our Nicobar people are related to them. This is what the study has come out with. Clear? Population, and they are residing in the mainland of Southeast Asia, and their language is Austroasiatic language. Okay, this is the findings of the study. And now, the Tin Mull community has remained ethnically distinct while exhibiting a pronounced genetic drift from the Nicobarese. Okay, so while we have seen these two populations, as these two group of populations have separated long ago, you know, the genetics of these two populations were isolated to such extent that right now, you know, there are no connections between them physically. There are no physical connections between them. Isn't that so? So, and that is why we can see genetic drift in the Nicobarese. Genetic drift means change in the genetic pattern, okay, of the population due to isolation is said to be the genetic drift. Okay, when a population, group of population is isolated from its parent population for so many generations, for example, let's say the 10th generation of the ancestral population will be totally different from their great grandparents. Isn't that so? Why? Because of a phenomena called as genetic drift or change in the genes of the children of the 10th generation. Okay, that is said to be the genetic drift. Genetic drift means genetic related to genes. Drift means change. Okay, change or moving away from a way it is intended to move. Okay, moving away to a side track is said to be the drift. So, movement, any sudden change or movement in the genes, okay, which are said to be the main genes of that population is said to be the genetic drift. Clear? So, this is what all this study has revealed. Okay, and also next, what is the next finding? Time frame of migration. Okay, earlier, according to the previous theory, the migration of Nicobarese linguistic ancestors to the early Holocene period, which is about 11,700 years ago. So, according to the previous studies, it is estimated that, you know, our Nicobarese population, okay, which are staying in Nicobar Islands right now, have migrated from the Austroasiatic, okay, land to the Nicobarese land about 11,700 years ago. This is the previous finding. Now, let's see the current finding. The new study, okay, dates this migration to approximately a period of 4,500 to 5,000 years ago. Previously, it was 11,700 years ago. Now, according to the latest study, it has been said that their migration has happened nearly 5,000 years ago, but not 11,700 years ago. Clear? This is the new study. And now genetic drift and isolation, which we have spoken about. This is the isolation that is responsible for genetic drift. If I got isolated from my family and, you know, if my generations continue to take place in any isolated place, my children after 10 generations will be totally different from what I am now because of drift in the genes. Clear? So, same thing happened with the Nicobarese population also. As they have migrated very long ago from their original homeland, now they have shown distinct, okay, or a special genetic features or signatures of their own, as well as which reflect long-term isolation on the islands. So, from this, scientists have concluded that, okay, yes, our Nicobarese population, which are staying right now, have shifted to Nicobar Islands very long ago, and as a result, you know, their genetics, whatever the genetic makeup of this population right now is totally different from their ancestors. Clear? And now, what is the significance of this study? Finally, so first thing is that this research has proven that the timeline which was previously estimated about the migration is wrong, and now a different timeline has been established. Okay, so from now we can say that this migration has happened quite recently than the previously estimated migration time period. Clear? And now it also highlights, what does it do? It also highlights the interplay between migration, isolation and cultural evolution. Okay, it is because of the migration from the homeland to a different place, and also it is because of a phenomena called as isolation, because they didn't have any connections with the ancestors, that is they are totally isolated, isn't that so? Because of these two phenomena, there happened to come about a new culture in Nicobar population. Okay, so these are the three phenomena which have been highlighted over in this research. Clear? Okay, and this has, okay, shaped the unique identity of the Nicobarese tribe in the Nicobar archipelago. Okay, that is why till today Nicobar population stand very differently with their unique culture, because of their isolation only. Just because of their isolation only, they have preserved their own newly evolved culture from their ancestors. They don't follow neither their ancestors nor even the modern human beings also. Okay, so this is what has been concluded out of the study. Clear? Now, coming to the next topic. What is that? Concerns in rapid urbanization in India. Urbanization in India, not only in India but also globally, the rate of urbanization is enhancing without any doubt in that, isn't that so? So now let's see what this urbanization is, what are the concerns of it, both positive concerns and negative concerns also. Okay, so before that, let's see, October 31st every year is observed as World Cities Day. October 31st of every year is observed as World Cities Day, and it is celebrated by the United Nations General Assembly, October 31st. Clear? Okay, now let's see what is urbanization. Urbanization is nothing but the process of people migrating from rural areas to urban areas. Okay, urban areas, corresponding growth in the number of people living in the cities, and it is also the number of people living in the cities is also said to be the urbanization. Now, what is the significance of this urbanization? Why are we supposed to study this urbanization itself in special? Is that because urbanization along with industrialization and also the sectoral change holds key to the nature of the socio-economic transformation in the country, because of its induced socio-economic transformation in the country. It is because of urbanization only people will experience socio-economic transmission, or it's socio-economic transformation. Why? Because in rural areas they won't be experiencing this industrialization, and also they won't be experiencing this sectoral change from agriculture to some other sector. Here it is industrial sector. People generally living in the rural areas mostly concentrate or depend on agricultural sector itself, which is a very, very known fact. Of course, now the situations have changed even in the rural areas also, but you know, at least a decade ago the situation wasn't so, right? So the change in this sector as well as exposure to industrialization also transforms them both socially and economically also. That is why we will be studying about urbanization. Clear? And now coming to global trend. If you observe the global trend, the world's urban population has reached an estimated 57.5% of the world's total population, and these projections, these numbers are going to be doubled by 2050. Okay, so as of now, the world's total urban population stood at 57.5%, and this is going to double by 2050. If you observe the global trends. And now if we observe in India, according to 2011 census, you know, urban population in India was about 31.2%. Remember the statistics, okay? Urban population in India stood about 31.2% according to 2011 census of the total population, okay? By 2036, towns and cities will be home to 40% of the population, with urban areas contributing to almost 70% of the GDP. This is also one of the important factors which we will be studying about urbanization, because of their highest contribution to the GDP over rural population. Okay, so by 2030 here, if you remember the statistics, please remember the statistics over here. India will be home to 40% of the population. Okay, and also it will be contributing to your whooping amount of 70%, percentage of 70 to the GDP, which is not at all a smaller amount. Isn't that so? And now, if you observe the South India is one of the most urbanized area compared to the North India, and that too, you know, states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala have stood in a position of reaching about 50% of urban population. Tamil Nadu and Kerala, remember these points also, okay, which will be helpful for your examination. And now, what are the concerns of this rapid urbanization? So, generally, these are the general concerns. First one is, what is first concern? Groundwater depletion. So, due to its high population, you know, vast number of, due to rapid urbanization as well as industrial expansion, groundwater is getting depleting faster than its recharging rate. Because of this high population in urban areas as well as industrialization also, large amount of groundwater is being used, okay, than its recharging capacity, which is a alarming situation. If this happens, you know, we'll be suffering with shortage of water. Okay, and now climate change as usual. So rapid urbanization intensifies pollution because of heavy industrialization and because of the use of heavy motor vehicles in urban areas compared to the rural areas. It leads to climate change, thereby contributing to urban floodings. Okay, increase in temperatures, unbearable temperatures, and that too kind of things and matter. So cities in the NCR region rank among the most polluted. North Capital Region, the cities surrounding North Capital Region till today are considered to be the most polluted cities. They are unable to, you know, come down of that state of most polluted cities because of this high urbanization itself. Clear? And now, what is the next concern? Deindustrialization. Okay, so what is the outcome of this deindustrialization? It leads to declining share of employment in manufacturing sector, which deprives the jobs for growing population in cities. It has led to job losses in cities like Ahmedabad, Delhi, Surat and Mumbai. Okay, so deindustrialization phenomenon is happening in urban areas right now because of the shift in sector, because of the shift in industrial sector to service sector. Because these days, you know, service sector is gaining most dominant position in the economy. So as a result of this, deindustrialization phenomena is taking place, and as a result, those people who have migrated to the urban areas to depend on manufacturing sector are going to lose their jobs. Okay, this already started taking place in Ahmedabad, Surat, okay, Mumbai and Delhi, which were highly predominant in manufacturing sectors once. Okay, this is one more concern. And now, urban planning issues. So, all the planning issues of the urban cities mostly are outdated. Isn't that so? Yes, outdated. And also they are failing to address the population, growing population, as well as their updated needs, thereby not able to provide them even the minimum facilities or the basic facilities and also the updated facilities also to urban people. Okay, and now next phenomenon is urban heatlands. Why? Because what is this phenomena? Because all the land cover of the urban areas is mostly covered by huge buildings. Isn't that so? The soil cover in urban areas is very, very less when compared to the rural areas. So thereby what happens? It will be absorbing more heat and also retaining more heat, thereby, you know, resulting in high temperatures, which are unbearable right now. This is one of the major reason for increase in global warming in cities. Okay, and now let's see the impacts of the rapid urbanization. Okay, first of all, growing inequality. In urban areas, if we see the gap between wealthy people, middle class people and the poor people, the gaps are very, very huge when compared to the rural areas. Okay, and now Socio-economic segregation, same as well. So as city development increasingly caters to the wealthy while ignoring the needs of the broader population. Okay, so city needs, wealthy needs will be much more taken care by the urban areas than the needs of the poor, which will automatically result in socio-economic segregation between the wealthy and the poor people, especially in urban areas. Okay, you can see this phenomenon everywhere, but this segregation is much more vast in urban areas. Okay, now we have discussed water scarcity also, and now lack of infrastructural development in cities. Cities here often suffer from housing shortages. Okay, poor access to clean water and sanitation. Even if houses are there, they are not much more affordable to the middle class people also. Then what about the poor people? Okay, so these are some of the unaffordable, lack of infrastructural problems. Okay, now what are the way forward measures suggested over here? Okay, first of all, increase investments in eco-friendly housing. Okay, improved public transit and infrastructure to withstand climate events. Okay, eco-friendly houses investments should be enhanced. Why? Because to withstand the extreme climate events which we are facing right now. Okay, just like we are facing the extreme heat in Hyderabad, which was a never seen phenomena. It is seen from the past 3 to 4 years. Before that, Hyderabad never used to be this hot as it was now. And now enhanced, so community engagement should be enhanced, and also urban governance should also be improved a lot. Okay, by keeping in mind the necessities of below middle class as well as the poor people. Okay, and now it is supposed to urban areas are supposed to promote sustainable building materials as well as water conservation. Okay, very, very important, and also emergency preparedness to withstand climate disruptions. Okay, these are some of the measures that are to be taken by the urban areas and their government also. Okay, now smart city solutions can improve the quality of life by using artificial intelligence and Internet of Things also, and also data analytics in order to manage resources efficiently, because it is the urban areas who will be suffering the lack of resources. In order to protect our resources, governments should depend on smart city solutions, which is nothing but the use of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, as well as analysis of the data in order to use the resources sustainably. And also focusing on skilling the urban workforce, which is very, very important. Enhancing the skills of the urban workforce, especially in the informal sector, those working in the informal sector. These are some of the way forward measures suggested over here. Clear? Now, coming to next topic. Nagaland's Hornbill Festival. What is this? This is a unique festival celebrated in Nagaland state of our nation. Okay, so this year it is the 25th celebration of this festival that has been held in Nagaland. Generally it will be held from 1st December to 10th December. Okay, and it has started from the year 2000. Okay, it will be held in the first week of the December, and it has started from this festival is being celebrated from 2000 onwards. So this is the 25th festival. Okay, this festival is also quite controversial in nature. Why? Because we'll see. Come, the 25th Hornbill Festival, okay, is controversial. Why is it controversial? Because of the government's decision to allow Indian-made foreign liquor at the event. Generally in Nagaland, consumption and production of the liquor are totally banned by the government. But this year, the government, it has planned to allow both the consumption as well as the production of liquor over here in this festival, which has drawn huge controversy from the public as well as the church also. Okay, before that, let's see briefly what this Hornbill Festival is. Okay, it is a celebration held every year from 1 to 10 December in Kohima, which is the capital city of Nagaland. Clear? And now it is a major tourist attracting festival which will be drawing its huge economy. Nagaland will be drawing its economy from this festival. Okay. And it will be attracting over 1.54 lakh visitors in 2023. It has attracted 1.54 lakh visitors in the year 2023, and it was first held in the year 2000. Clear? And now it is named after an Indian bird known as hornbill. And its scientific name is Bucerus bicornis. Okay, why only hornbill festival? Because this particular bird, it is very colorful forest bird, and it is displayed in the many folklores of the state's tribal people. This bird has a special place, significant place in many folk stories of these tribal people of Nagaland. Nagaland consists of 17 kinds of tribes. Remember this also. Okay, and now this festival highlights, what are the highlights of this festival? There are traditional Naga Morungs. This is a type of tribe which will be conducting this festival, and they will be conducting exhibitions. Okay, and also they will be selling their art and craft. And also food stalls will be established. Okay, and herbal medicine stalls also will be established over there, and also flower shows and sales will be exhibited in this particular festival, and also their cultural medley will be performed there. Their unique songs, dances, fashion shows, etc. everything will be exhibited in this festival. That is why it is of this significance. Clear? Now let's come to the liquor consumption over in Nagaland. Okay, so there is an act called as Nagaland Liquor Total Prohibition Act. So according to this act, okay, the production, sale and consumption of liquor is totally banned in Nagaland. Okay, if you go to the history of this act, this Nagaland introduced complete prohibition in the year 1989. Okay, under the act of Nagaland Liquor Total Prohibition Act, and it is supported by the Church of Nagaland as well as Naga Mothers Association. These are the two organizations which stood in support of this particular act. Okay, and this if we go back to the history of this prohibition of liquor, the prohibition traces its roots to the arrival of American Baptists in the 1870s. It is the American Baptists who arrived to Nagaland in 1870s have proposed for the ban of this liquor. Generally tribes, you know, it is very, very natural and common among them to consume liquor which is prepared by their own. Okay, alcohol prepared by their own. And some tribes will be, you know, consuming alcohol made out of a special variety of flower known as mahua flower found in the forests. Okay, and some people will be consuming alcohol made out of cashew fruits, not nut, cashew fruits. Okay, so and some people will be consuming alcohol made out of alcohol or beer made out of rice. Okay, this is their traditional way of enjoying their life. Okay, which is banned by the American missionaries who have entered Nagaland in the year way back 1870. Okay, because they have labeled consumption of alcohol or liquor as sinful and also started penalizing all the offenders. Okay, and next by 1890s, within a span of 20 years, alcohol was completely banned in Nagaland, with violators expelled from the community, and those who have violated this act were totally expelled, barred from the community. Okay, despite 87% of the population being Christians, predominantly Baptists, the traditional preparation consumption of rice beer persists. Okay, because of the highly predominant presence of Christians, and that too a segment called as Baptists among Christians. Okay, so there, you know, rice beer consumption is permitted because they have considered consumption of rice beer as not sinful. Okay, and now why all of a sudden the state decided to ban this, to lift up this ban? Because the reasons are over here. In August this year, last year, that is on 2024 August, the State Assembly of Nagaland okay, has discussed the effectiveness of this prohibition. It started for the first time to discuss the effectiveness of this prohibition. To what extent this total prohibition of liquor is useful to the people. Okay, so and what are they found out is that, you know, they found that there are numerous health hazards because of the consumption of spurious alcohol or fake alcohol. Even though the traditionally made alcohol is banned, people started consuming fake alcohol, which has led to several health hazards to them. This is the outcome of this, you know, this is the outcome of a study. That is why the government of Nagaland has decided to lift up the ban on alcohol consumption. Anyways, people are also not listening, isn't that so? And thereby they are spoiling their healths. And now officials argued for regulating alcohol use instead of continuing prohibition. And some of the officials, they have, you know, argued to regulate the alcohol consumption instead of totally banning it, which is a useless thing. Okay, and now they pointed to ongoing liquor, and also they have pointed to some other problems like liquor smuggling from Assam, okay, and also the presence of bootleggers. Bootleggers are also nothing but smugglers, okay, and spurious alcohol, that is fake alcohol, and also increased narcotic use. Drug use has also increased. Okay, that is why, you know, as officials have pointed out these problems, thereby, you know, Nagaland government, it has decided to regulate alcohol consumption instead of totally banning it. Okay, so the government is also motivated by the potential excise revenue which it is going to gain out of this alcohol consumption. Okay, and also while the government is considering this change, the church is in strong opposition with this lift of the ban as of now. So that is why, you know, this has been in a controversy. Hornbill Festival stood as a controversial festival, especially in 2024 December. Clear? So with this, we have completed this session of Yuddha Abhyas and hope this will be useful for you. Please do like, comment and subscribe to Vishnu IAS Academy for more these kind of videos. All the best. Bye.